To calve, can I say, a reasonable time of the year, it's not true. They can get pregnant in good numbers at 55% of body weight, sometimes as low as 50% expected mature cow body weight. And Rick Funston at the University of Nebraska, Andy Roberts at Miles City, Montana, they're finding that those cows that are developed to a lesser weight turn out to be better lifetime cows, better lifetime producers. And so, you know, this all becomes fairly important. Minimal development replacement heifers. Those heifers are expected to eat the grass you see there. Here they were eating some cake, so they were getting some protein supplement, a little bit of energy. Probably a 15 to 18% cake that they were getting. And they were fed hay as needed. Snow got to be a little tough or something like that, or the grass just wasn't very good. They were fed hay kind of as needed, but it was just a prairie hay, not anything spectacular. Wouldn't be but about 7% protein. So you buy small replacement cows to fit your environment. And if you're a 40 cow operation, it's a hobby, that's my suggestion. Don't worry about making replacement heifers. Let somebody else do it. Ask them to do a few more so you can buy a few cows from them every year. Buy replacement cows, never heifers. And just terminal cross. Your life is simple. One herd, one kind of calf. And it just makes life a lot simpler to have terminal cross calves, and they can just be cows. I can tell you this, there's no way the maternal herds, even the best maternal herds, or let me say it even different than that, they might not be maternal herds, but they might be keeping their own replacement heifers. There's a lot of them out there doing that today that aren't very maternal, but yet they're keeping all their own replacement heifers. There's no way that either of those, good maternal herds or not so very good maternal herds, can compete with the terminal herd in profitability. Even if the maternal herd is just buying cows, not the spectacular, just cows. And I've run the arithmetic on it way too many times, and I ran both kinds of ranches. And so I had the economics in front of me year after year. The terminal will beat the maternal unless the maternal herd can sell bred cows to the terminal herd. And they have to sell them at a premium. So the premium that the terminal guy has to pay has to be depreciated, but that depreciation becomes a good low-cost substitute for heifer development. In other words, in place of him developing heifers, which costs, he pays some additional depreciation. When I sold those kind, I didn't keep too many cows beyond about 6 years of age. So I was riding the appreciation side of the curve and was able to capture the appreciation rather than the depreciation. Now I kept some beyond, but they were the ones that always calved early, real early. Okay? So you raise replacement heifers from both bulls and cows that fit your environment, and then you cut inputs and cull the right cow, and you've seen the list. I'm convinced longevity is a result of fertility. Not completely, but to a large extent. Most cows would live a long, long time, but they fail to get pregnant someplace along the line, so we never give them a chance to live as long as they would live. And I think fertility is a result of environmental fit. If they fit our environment, they can stay. This isn't grazing. Why do we do it? This was a ranch of 350,000 acres, about 8,000 of which was irrigated, and roughly 5,000 cows and a lot of yearlings. Most of the calves held over either as replacement heifers or as yearling steers. We weren't going to graze all the grass this year. The year before, we'd emptied our hay sheds because it was a bad winter, deep snow. That was our contingency plan. The reason we had hay sheds was because we didn't want to feed the hay. And you know what several winters sitting out, summers, does to hay. So we put it under sheds so we didn't have to feed it. Some of that hay would get 5 and 6 years old. But the previous winter to this, we had to empty the sheds. They're just bad snow like this. Cows weren't going to eat it. We didn't give it to them. And so we were replenishing it. We had more pasture than we needed. So we had to do some arithmetic. What does it cost to buy hay? What does it cost to buy yearlings to come in and graze the extra feed? What will it pay us if we have somebody else bring their yearlings in, and we feed them for them and charge them for that. Anyway, we get done with all the arithmetic, and the best alternative was to do this. The guy that's sitting in the swather, that's not our equipment. We sold our haying equipment because we didn't want to be tempted. It used to be, they'd hay all 8,000 irrigated acres. We didn't do it, sold all the equipment so we wouldn't be tempted to ever do it again. This is a guy we'd buy alfalfa from as a protein supplement. He's an alfalfa farmer down the river a little ways. And he could only cut twice a year for alfalfa, and he was pretty Johnny on the spot because he'd sell mostly dairy then. And he could jump in between alfalfa cuttings and do this for us. And so, I don't know, does that look like very good hay to you guys? I mean, in terms of quantity? And it is. And it was right at 4 ton to the acre, when the typical acre in that country will grow about a ton and a half per acre. And this was right at 4. We became convinced, with no fertilization, we became convinced this had been pastured for the previous 6 or 7 years, and then maybe a year of haying, and then that many years before that, that the return of urine and manure to that same ground has a tremendous fertility effect. And then a friend downriver, just a little bit from where we were, not more than 3 or 4 miles, he came to us, and he was beginning to do quite a bit of winter grazing. And so he had 2 pieces, one just across the fence from each other, same land. And this one he hayed, and this one he grazed, safe for winter grazing. And he said, I went there to cut the hay on the one I hayed, and he said, I got there to start, and I looked across the fence, and he said the difference was huge in favor of the one they always grazed in the wintertime. And he said, I got scratching my head and said, what the devil's the difference here? What's going on? And he said, it has to be that the manure and urine from the grass that's growing over there goes right back there. He said, I didn't get to the bottom of what changing. He was considering several changes. Do I just make sure I feed back in the same place to get the manure and urine back? Or do I flip-flop the years? Or I've got a few more acres, can I rotate it a little and not hay with near the frequency for the hay that I do need for the bad years, the bad winter years? Or do maybe I just buy hay? And so he was looking at alternatives, but this is a real effect from grazing to have that happen. Now this is not that same hay. This is alfalfa hay. You expect the cows to eat that old brown stuff out there, and it's poor. It's really poor. We couldn't hay it if we wanted to because it's too swampy, and the cows won't graze it in the summertime. It's a swampy area. When it freezes over in the wintertime, the cattle will graze it. And we'd haul them a little alfalfa hay, and then they really graze it good. Feed the equivalent of 3 pounds to 5 pounds, usually closer to 5 pounds, just in case we didn't make mistakes. We covered, or if we did make mistakes in our calculations, we were covered. About 5 pounds a head a day. Okay, 5 times 7 is 35. We only wanted to do that 3 times a week. So we divided the 35 by 3 and got 12. So we hauled 12 pounds each time we went, 3 times in a week. Okay? So, and I would never go more than 3 times a week if you're supplementing any kind of protein supplement, whether it's a cube, whether it's hay. I love alfalfa hay as a protein supplement for grasses. But a lot of times it's too far away and it costs way too much by the time you get it to where you want to feed it. But 3 times a week. You know, when I first started doing that with hay, people said, your cows are going to be waiting at the gate every morning. Well, I kind of worried, but now I can look them in the eye and say, you've never tried it, have you? Because those cows aren't waiting at the gate every morning. They don't want to waste the energy. They're out grazing, and they can't calendar. Skip 1 day, skip 1 day, skip 2. They won't calendar that at all. Feed them on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. They won't skip it. They won't calendar that. And so they don't wait. But they'll really eat that kind of stuff. Just the right kind. And that brings me to another point. Supplementation, strategic supplementation. What does strategic supplementation mean? Right amount, right time. Right amount, right time. If you do that and learn what right amount is and what right time is, it doesn't take very much. You know, we started hearing the speed limit printing stuff. And Rick Funson's the guy that really got to the bottom of that first. And they were doing work because of some of the suggestions I was making to them. I said, hey guys, I think you're overfeeding protein. And I think your studies don't go low enough, testing low enough levels of protein. Well, why? And I said, well, when I don't feed as much protein as you guys are showing in your tests, I still get good pregnancy rates. So Don Adams said, okay, we'll put in a zero protein control, no protein. Boy, those cows, they suffered in body condition, but their pregnancy rates were just as good. And so that's, well, maybe we don't feed any protein. But Funston happened to be there at the time, and he said, let's just do something interesting. Let's take those calves and follow them all the way through. They took the steer calves and followed them clear, and they had them identified. Mama got no protein, Mama got this level of protein, Mama got this level of protein. They followed them all the way through the slaughter. There wasn't much difference between the supplemented at two different levels, but the ones that got zero protein, the dams that got zero protein, the calves that were in embryo at the time, they did not perform as well in the feedlot, and they did not grade as well. The females, they did not breed as well. And so that fetal imprint effect came about, and then, well, okay, I hope not too many of you here are feed salesmen, but the feed salesmen in the world now, they start coming out and they want to sell about 3 times as much as you need. Because of this research that's been that shows you need some, yes, no question. And that kind of spurs my thinking to right amount, right time. Know what you need to feed and the time duration that it needs to be fed. And then I think you get those 10-to-1 paybacks. I feed a little bit at the right time, and the payback can be huge. And I'm not a no input guy. Some people are, but I am a low input guy. I just think if we know how to direct the use of our inputs like that, it can really be beneficial. Okay, we need to put an emphasis on marketing. And production and marketing must work together. Short calving season. Long breeding season. People say, what? We did some interesting things around these. We got to where we were only breeding our heifers for 30 days. And then ultimately down to 24. That's exposure to bulls. If we would happen to AI with just kind of a modest, most people might even call it funky, synchronization program, we'd AI and then we'd put the bulls up for maybe 21, 24 days. But we pulled the heifers that were bull bred, we'd pull that down to 30 days. And after the first year we did that, we never did it again because the guys that calved the heifers, we calved large groups. And they said, don't ever breed heifers longer than 30 days again. They really appreciated that concise heifer calving season when they were calving a lot. They were busy while they were busy, but when they were done, they were done. Because we'd go to the due date from when the bulls were taken out, go back to that due date, any cow that hadn't calved, heifer that hadn't calved by that time, we would induce, so their calving would end in the next 36 hours. And so that drove that. And then at the same time, you know, on that open heifer, the pregnant ones were good cows and the open heifers were good merchandise. Open heifers always made us money because they're like the stalker. They were developed like a stalker, they were run like a stalker. The only difference was the cost of putting a bull with them. And we charged that cost on our enterprise accounting. We charged that against the heifers we kept. Didn't charge it against the open heifers, and the open heifers were always profitable, nicely profitable, I might add. Some days you wished you had more open heifers. But, you know, and they never bred at high rates when you expose them only for 30 days. But, you know, they started out in the 70s and they worked their way into the 80s over a period of time. But while they were working their way into the 80s, we were shortening the cow calving season. We ended up with having cows that we had no cows. Well, let's say it this way, any cow that didn't calve in the first 30 days. We were calving in April, so you get March, we didn't count those. But any cow that hadn't calved by the end of April was sold before the next calving season. And how did we accomplish that? We preg-checked the cows sometime in mid to late October, maybe early November sometimes. Take the bulls out the day we preg-checked them. And we told the guys doing the preg-checking, if the pregnancy didn't occur, in your best estimate, didn't occur by the 1st of September, call for open. And so on our books, on our records, our preg-check records that go back in time, those cows were open. They weren't part of our pregnant cow group. Okay, we have moved those cows to corn stalks in Nebraska on the Platte River. And then December 15th, we'd go in and we'd preg check. So those cows had to be June and July calvers. And it gave enough time that we could pretty much diagnose all the pregnancies. And we had a guy that bought those, and he was doing ET work for some fairly noted seed stock producers. And he really liked those cows as recent cows, and he just kept coming back year after year to buy those cows. Well, then next spring, we'd go to calving time. And if the cow hadn't calved by the end of April, we'd set them aside, and they were going to, most of them calve in May, because remember the June and July calvers went the previous fall. They were calving in May, and we learned after we were there 2 or 3 years that about 87% would have calved by the end of April. Pretty good rate, huh? 87%. I've never been able to match that with AI, synchronized or otherwise. But 87% would have calved, and the ones that hadn't calved, we offered them for sale that fall. We bred them to calve again in May, and we ended up making a deal with a guy who was calving in May, grazing an awful lot like we were, but wanting to buy all of his replacement cows. And he bought those year after year after year off the preg chute. Had kind of an interesting arrangement. I'd get on a sort gate, he'd come to our place, and he'd let the cows go by him, and I'd be on the gate. We gave him the right to cut some off, and every once in a while he'd just tell me to cut this into the cut pen. And so I would. About half of them I knew he was going to cut off before they got there, and I was ready with the gate. About half of them I'm not sure why he cut, and I still am not, but he did, and we let him. But the rest of them would go on down to the preg chute. We had an interesting preg chute. It was a herringbone deal that we could be cows that come up an alleyway like this, and then 3 herringbone stalls would break off to the left. So we'd be checking 3 cows at a time, and then there was an alley at the end of that would let them go on forward into the working chute. So the guys in the working chute stayed pretty busy all the time. Anyway, his son would be down there with a branding iron. The cow would come out of the preg chute and go up to the working chute, and if she'd been marked as a pregnant, he'd put their brand on them. So we had to have a working deal with the brand inspector. We were in the brand inspection stage. And he understood that that was going to happen. So when he came to brand inspect those cows, he was looking for our brand and not those guys' brand, because he didn't want us to sell somebody else's cow. So that happened, but that night, that very same night, or the next morning, first thing, they would be on a truck and gone. And so that was real neat market, and we were selling those for a very nice premium, both the June and the Julys. Now the other part of the story, so we preg checked in December, cows that weren't pregnant then, we had put bulls back with that group of cows about Thanksgiving time. And we happened to have a sister ranch in Oklahoma, out in the Osage, and they would take those fall calving cows down there. And they never bred like the cows would have bred up in Nebraska, but they weren't bad. They were breeding in the mid to high 80s, and they didn't have to raise any replacement heifers. We just sent them the replacements. So that worked pretty nicely. So those are some of the marketing things you can attach to your production system. And gosh, in the meantime, you're letting Mother Nature select your cattle for you. You're going to fit your environment better. They're going to be lower input cattle that just work better. Okay, so we've seen all of this stuff before. Short exposure, lots of heifers. So we put these charts together. 4 things to manage: production, economics and finance, marketing and people. There are 3 ways to improve profit: reduce overheads. That's usually the low-hanging fruit. And I might add, those decisions are easier to make on paper than they are emotionally. We've got stuff we just don't want to be rid of. We don't think of the time we used it and needed it. But was it enough to justify having it? Could we have hired that work done? Could we have rented a piece of equipment to get that work done? All kinds of alternatives to having the stuff we have that sits there and depreciates most of the year for just a little bit of use. Again, my friend Gordon Hazard, talking about overheads, he says, the most equipment that a cowman should ever have is a wheelbarrow. And then only if he really loves equipment. Well, then he admitted to exaggerating a little bit, but he drove me around his place in a rattle trap pickup. I think he tried to pull his horse stock trailer with it once in a while, but I don't know how it did it, to tell you the truth. But he almost made a believer out of me. He didn't have much. His shipping corral, and I think he had more than one, but it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. But a D9 cat wasn't going to push it out of the ground either. He found scrap metal materials and heavy stuff, and had a pretty good welder put it together for him. And he had it kind of long and narrow, and he had his cattle broke to handle, and he was a good animal handler. Plus he'd chum them into there because they were all broke to fall cake. And he'd chum them into those pens, and immediately they would start slowing back in the direction from whence they had come, and he would load a truck every 12 minutes. And I don't remember how many they wanted to load in any one shipping, but load the truck in every 12 minutes, and when he was done, he didn't want to see any manure on the corral floor. And he said buyers didn't like it. They quite often call and say the difference between on-truck and off-truck weight isn't big enough. He said, well, look, if you don't like the cattle after you've had them a while, just let me know and we'll see what we can do about it. He says none of them ever called him back after that. And they kept buying the cattle year after year, complained about the difference between on-truck and off-truck weight all the time. And one of his guys said, you know, he used to take us around the corral after we were done, and he said there wouldn't be but half a dozen cow pats laying on the corral floor, but he pointed once and there's $5. There's $5. He wanted that weight on the truck, and but that corral didn't cost him much, and it was very effective. And I just think that's the way the guy thought about almost everything he did. So anyway, reduce the overheads, increase turnover, and then improve gross margin. And improve gross margin, most of you are going to do what you do vet-wise. You know, the vet services and the vaccines, etc., that you use are mostly there as an insurance policy. Now, the place that you can cut it is if you breed cattle to fit the environment. You don't have to doctor cattle much anymore. I don't think my brother owns a bottle of antibiotic. I don't think he has for a number of years. He has a few cattle die, but darn few. And he's just selected cattle to fit environment, and now they fit. And he doesn't treat for lice, he doesn't treat for grubs. He gives a few immunizations, but that's just insurance policy. So I don't think, once you get to that, you're not going to change the insurance policy very much. So the fed feed deal, how far can you trim that without trimming too much? What is right amount? What is right time? I think those are the things we need to learn. And you need to learn it for your own place, your own environment, because it won't be the same twice. Do I see a hand going up there, or just? Okay. And then the 5 essentials. All these graphs interact, but the 5 essentials are just your attitude or your approaches to managing the other areas. To managing the 3 ways to make profit, to managing production, economics, finance, marketing, and people. Just the approach. What should the approach be? How do we deal with that? Okay, it's question time.